building your budget to overcome burnout, because again, we want to talk about really practical steps you can take to understand what would I have to do financially to take care of myself in whatever stage of burnout I am in. But before we dive in, I want to tell you just a little bit of background about me and my story. So I know I've introduced myself. I'm Dr. Annie Cole. My doctorate is in education. So my background is actually in research. I'm an analyst, I'm a number cruncher, and that led me to eventually crunching numbers in the finance space, and have always had this passion for helping women. So that's how I brought those two things together. I'm the founder of Money Essentials for Women. If you want to check it out, it's money-essentials.com. Tons of free resources on there, everything from budgeting to debt payoff to career changes. So I grew up in a really tiny town, population of about 2,000. My graduating class was only 60 people. So when I went off to college as a first generation college student, I thought I'm going to get my bachelor's degree and make all the money in the world. And of course, became a social worker and made $26,000, which was my first reality hit that number one, work is really hard. Working 40 hours a week in this type of work is difficult. And I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. But number two, this is a low amount of money to do anything. I knew I wouldn't be able to have kids, support a family, buy a home on that salary. So it really shifted something in me. And I spent basically the next decade learning everything I could about how to climb the ladder, went back to school, figured out everything about personal finance. And the main question that I asked myself is, what if I'm capable of more? And that one question just propelled me forward. And so last year, before I started my own business, I was the vice president of a startup, and I had reached a $1 million net worth. And I realized I was on track to retire in my 40s. I had really learned all these things that a lot of my friends and family didn't know about finances. And so I thought, I want to fill a gap in the market. I want to help people on the education side learn about finances. That's not traditionally like going to a bank or going to your investment retirement rep. This is talking to other women about your money mindset, your career goals, and all the pieces in between. So I launched Money Essentials for Women, started doing financial coaching, and then from there, it's been almost a year of doing this work, and I just absolutely love it. So a few things that I really focus on. Number one, I really like to talk about advocacy, because as women, it's really important that we are advocating for ourselves, for raises, promotions, title changes. And when we're experiencing burnout, it's important that we're advocating for ourselves, because no one else is looking out for you in the way that you can look out for yourself. Number two, I talk a lot about investment and early retirement, how to become work optional, or how to work in the way that you want. So I've personally built my own business. I do freelance contract work. I like to help women understand that there's more options than just working 40 hours a week until you're 65. Number three, again, I talk a lot about working for yourself and the details on how to launch your own business, from product development to how to attract clients to how to financially plan for business. And then what we're going to focus on today, number four, how to thrive financially at the intersection of your finances, but also your physical, mental, and emotional health. Because one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of times, if you're talking about finance, you really just say, create a budget, pay off debt, invest, do these things. We all know those things, but we will not enact those things unless we actually feel good about it, have a vision for our future, and feel like we know what we're working towards. So if you don't have that why, it's going to be hard to do the what. And I think that that's really important, and why I'm really glad that we're talking about that today. So yeah, thanks for the comment there. So I'll tell you a little bit about my burnout story. The time I quit my job cold turkey. So I share this because this is what a lot of us probably feel like we want to do. And I actually did it. And I'm going to tell you what it felt like to do it, and then why I encourage you not to do it. So like I said, I started my job as a social worker, was making $26,000. I had been doing that for 2 years. I was extremely burnt out. And I remember the supervisor for a lot of us social workers gave us this burnout assessment. And I didn't know I was burnt out until I did that assessment. And once I read all the questions, I realized, wow, I'm actually extremely burnt out. Not just, oh, I'm showing some of these symptoms. Like, I'm dissociating. I'm doing some of the big, I'm having nightmares. I'm doing the big things that are signs. And so instead of, having a mentor that would have talked to me and saying like, here's how you can plan for this, here's what you can do, I literally quit my job cold turkey. And then the next day I printed out probably 50 copies of my resume on paper. And then I went place to place to a bunch of different businesses, handed in my resume. And within 3 days, I got a job offer to become a leasing agent at an apartment complex. And I was extremely lucky to get that job. It changed my life. I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the presentation today about what it means to take a bridge job. So a bridge job is something that you take that fills a gap. It's not necessarily a job that's the future job you want, but it helps you get through, and it can be very, very helpful for burnout. So that's what I did. I took that job as a leasing agent. I considered it a bridge job. I took about a year and a half to go into therapy to recover, and then to move into what I consider more of my career path that's taken me to today. So that's where I have experienced burnout and what I did. So we'll talk a little bit more about that option, but also a lot of other options that can be way, way more helpful when you're feeling that really strong burnout. So let's dive deeper. We're going to talk about financially planning for a burnout transition. And as I've already kind of alluded to, oh, I think my screen is frozen just a second. So when you are feeling burnt out, you really feel like your options are one of two options. So on the far left side, we feel like I can't do anything. I have this feeling of golden handcuffs. I'm tied to my job. I can't do anything because I have to stay. I have to make this money. I have a mortgage payment. I have kids. I have this trip coming up. I won't be on track for retirement if I quit. I'm responsible to my partner. There's all these pressures that make us kind of like freeze and we don't do anything. So that's the far end of keeping put, pushing through, also telling ourselves this isn't really burnout. It's going to be okay. It's going to change. Once I get through this really big project, it'll be different. So that's the far left side. And then on the far right side is what I did. And that is, I'm so burnt out. I can't even think about what my options are. I'm just going to quit cold turkey, which can be helpful, but it's also the most risky and can be the most expensive if you aren't able to find work right away. So what I want to talk to you about today are all of the options in between and how you can pick a specific option that you think is going to apply to your life. And I'll also talk to you about what you should be thinking about when it comes to these different options and how to make the right choice for you. So I want to start closer. Actually, I'll back up a little bit. So we're going to go from left to right. So we're going to talk about the simplest low-hanging fruit steps all the way over to the bigger steps, because I know for a lot of us, some of these low-hanging fruit steps are actually going to be able to help us a lot without having to quit cold turkey. So on the lowest side, let's talk about time off. And I want to be really cautious and kind of give a disclaimer first, because there is a lot of information about there that's well-meaning that says, just take time off, take a bubble bath, do some self-care, and you'll take care of yourself. And I will just say, as someone who went through burnout and went through therapy for burnout, if you are extremely burnt out, taking time off is actually not going to solve that. So I'm going to talk about how this can help, but just know that this is a really good option if you're just feeling like you're worn out, you need a break, you're not sure where you're at. But if you take an assessment and you're extremely burnt out, this probably is not going to solve the problem for you. But if you are feeling like you just need a break, so let's talk about who this is best for. You need to get some immediate relief from work. Your boss was being a jerk. You have had so many projects. Maybe you've been given additional responsibility. You're just feeling like, ugh, I need some time off. This is the perfect option for you. Take some time off, leave or PTO, get that relief from work. And the best thing I think you should do at this step is get a sense of your burnout level. And I think Allison has an assessment on her website. If not, I can also suggest some, but take a burnout assessment. It is so powerful to know actually what level of burnout you're at, because that can also help you decide what type of resources you need. Because on the low end, you really might just need some time off or some redesigning of your work. Whereas if you're on the further end, some cognitive therapy and some pieces of just like getting deeper into what is actually going on is going to be important. So get that sense of your burnout level. Oh, go ahead.
Annie, I was just going to jump in to say, I will link that resource. And I think this is a really great call out that, we should be thinking about rest, and we could do a whole nother hour on this. So we won't do it today, but, consistently, right? So if you're not quite at that full on burnout, hitting the wall, constantly exhausted place, you should still be thinking about rest, right? It's not just take a couple of days off or do the bubble bath once I've sort of landed in this place of chronic stress and overwhelm. So I love the disclaimer and just wanted to amplify that because I think it's really important.
Yeah, thank you. It's so important. And as we'll get deeper into this and talk about the more extreme options, it's powerful to know what level you're at, because it's not a weakness to think that you are very burnt out. It's literally a physical and mental experience. And so there's different ways you want to attack that. So again, taking time off, best for that immediate relief, getting a sense of where you're at, doing some reflection. So how to do it. If possible, take more than one day off at a time. I highly, highly suggest this only because taking one day off, it's really hard to get a lot done in one day and to feel removed. So the more you can take a day off right before a weekend or take, 2 days off butting up against a weekend so that you can get maybe 3 to 4 days, that's going to give you the time of reflection that you need to actually start thinking about where you're at right now. And the more you can protect yourself from that sense of, oh, I'm taking a day off, I'll just get a lot of stuff done. Use this time intentionally. Think about where you're at and what your vision is for what you want to do next. So again, use this time to self-evaluate, take a burnout assessment, get some support, and consider the next steps. So financial implications for this one, very, very low. So using your PTO, you hopefully will not have any financial loss. Potentially, you're going to do an unpaid leave. And in that case, you might have a small loss of income. But this is really something easy you can do right away to get some immediate relief and start moving the process forward. So let's dive into the second level, which is therapy and support. So this is best for someone who maybe you did that assessment, you have some burnout going on, and you're trying to figure out what to do next. So you really need help at this stage figuring out whether you should stay or leave. So you're looking for what is the root of the burnout, because the burnout might be the fact that you are working 40 hours a week and you have some personal stuff going on, and that's actually the root. It might be that the context of your work environment is toxic. It might be the actual job. Like when I was a social worker answering crisis calls, it was the job that was the thing that was burning me out. So getting into some sort of therapy or recovery can help you figure out how to attack the root of the thing that's overwhelming you. So how to do it? First, talk to your HR department if you're not aware of what your benefits are. So a lot of times they will have counseling services. You'll also have something available through your health insurance. They may even have crisis lines or other things that are available, free numbers that they have that you wouldn't otherwise know about. So start with your HR department if you feel comfortable. And then if you have no benefits, there's also tons of options online to pay for support. I know that I can't remember where I ended up connecting with my therapist, but I've connected with therapists through my insurance. I've also found therapists online just by searching for therapists and then paying out of pocket. Usually it's anywhere from, $100 to multiple $100, but you can also pay out of pocket if you need it. So even if you don't have insurance, you can definitely get the support you need. And then financially, the implications here. So check your insurance first to see what your copay might be for this type of support. A lot of times it will outline specifically if you're getting mental health support, if it has a copay or if you're paying out of pocket for that. And then compare different options online. So again, there are some that you can just pay out of pocket and they really vary in their cost. So you can just maybe pull up a couple different options, see which one fits best in your budget. And then also consider the length of time that you need this. So if you're really not sure, you could commit to just doing one appointment and have one 1 hour conversation with the therapist where you get a lot of suggestions and resources, and you just start there and you commit to paying that one-time fee or the one-time copay to get all the support you need. And then later on, decide if you want to continue working with someone and pay for that over time. So level 3, let's say you're feeling like you're burnout and you have identified that the job is the problem. So at this point, this is best for someone who knows they need to leave their job. And as you're seeing here, we started with, just some taking care of yourself and reflection. And I think that is so, so important. I wish I would have done that before I would have quit my job cold turkey. I just jumped to this step or even the next step of just quitting. And I really did not do the self-reflection first. And I think, a lot of us worry about ruining our resume by just jumping into another job. That is true. It is important to take care of your resume. But honestly, I think what's even more important is taking care of yourself, because if we jump into another job too quickly, we might jump into another toxic environment. So in this circumstance, this is really best for people who know they need to leave and either think about, am I ready for a bridge job? Meaning I want something that's going to take me from where I am now to where I want to go, but I don't know where I want to go is. So I need something in the interim that will allow me to rest, recoup, and also figure out what I want. Or are you ready to make a permanent move? And in that case, you already know what you need to do and where you want to go. You just actually need to do the work of job searching. So how to do this one, we have these 3 options. So bridge job, this is when you're looking for a stepping stone. For me, that was taking a leasing agent job. And what I've heard from some other folks that have done something like this when they're feeling really burnt out is that they're looking for something that will let their mind rest a little bit. So whether that is administrative work or something that personally doesn't stress you out, it could be either the work that's different or it could be the amount of work. So maybe you take a part-time job, freelance work, something that's going to be less of a time commitment to give yourself also the space in the day to recover and do stuff that's non-work related. If you don't go for a bridge job, you already know what you want to do next. Think about one of two options. So number one, you want to go to a new company because you realize it's the company context that is creating your burnout, or you want to go to a new field. So again, in my situation, social work just wasn't the right field for me. So I switched into doing peer advising in a higher education environment. And that was so much more gentle and less intense. So it wasn't the company, it was the job. So think about that. Is it the company that's really bringing this up for you, or is it the field and the role that you're in? Financially, when you're going to do this, the best thing you can do first is create a minimum monthly budget. So, how you can do this, just open up an Excel spreadsheet. It does not need to be fancy. Literally, just write down all of your expenses for the month and what they cost. And then from there, decide, I like to create a couple different versions. So, your minimum budget is I have no frills. I'm not going to spend money on any trips, any travel, anything fancy. I'm just covering my basics. And then you can have a medium budget that is, okay, I have my basics plus a little bit of fun and some additional frills in there. And then you have your dream budget, which is this is what I would actually want to have eventually. Once you have those budgets, it will help you decide what you want to target for your job search. So especially if you're looking for a bridge job and you want to do something part-time, you'll have an actual number in mind that you can go for so that you know, okay, I can go out and need to apply for a job that's at minimum going to pay me this amount so that I can cover my bills. So yeah, you're going to be using your minimum budget to aim for the new role that hits the target that you're looking for. All right, so the quit and shift. This is what I did, and this is what some folks do if they're feeling really burnt out. And now we're getting further to the right, where at this point, these are going to have deeper financial implications and are really a better fit for someone who actually has some financial reserves. So you either have some equity, some investment, some savings, something that you can pull on to be able to survive and thrive during this time of transition. So this is best for someone also that needs to leave immediately. So if you are, feeling like your life is at risk, you really need to take a break, absolutely, this is the fit for you. And again, this would be a situation where you want to talk with your HR department, see what's available for you, potentially to have some sort of paid break or leave to get out of the situation. And then also it's great for folks that actually have financial reserves. So if you have enough in your savings account to live for 6 months and I'm burnt out, I need to leave right now, you can use those financial reserves. So how to do this one? Again, we want to use that monthly minimum budget to know what we need to live on. And then we want to look at what you have in your savings account, in your investments, in all of these different places, calculate a total sum that you know you can access, and then use your minimum monthly budget to see how long it can last. So for example, if you have $10,000 in reserves, you need $3,000 a month to live on. 3,000 times 3 months is going to be $9,000. So you know that you could basically have a 3-month transition time that is completely covered that you could use to transition. And then when you feel ready, you can give notice at your current job. But again, I would definitely encourage you to do some of these pieces ahead of time, especially the former steps we've already talked about, so that when you do quit your job, you feel really confident, like you know exactly what you're going to do in this transition time. So financial implications, it can actually cause additional stress if you decide to do this because you are then going to be drawing from your savings account or your reserves. So again, think about what you have available and what seems reasonable for you. So again, let's say you have $10,000. Maybe you need $3,000 to live on for 1 month. So you give yourself that grace to say, hey, if I hit the ground running, I feel pretty confident that based on my skills in this field, I could probably get another job in 30 days. Therefore, I'm going to give myself a 30-day break. Or maybe you even purposefully get your next job set up and you tell them, I'm not able to start until this date. And you give yourself that 30-day break with a new job set up. And then you use your savings to give yourself that break before you transition. The benefit here, though, is it can also give you that extended time to either explore new jobs or, like I was saying, give yourself a late start date at the next job so that you have that peace and quiet and time to recover before you move into the next piece. And then we have the most expensive option, but something that is something that's actually been coming up a lot more lately in the news. So there's this idea called micro retirement. And micro retirements, you know, if you don't work in a job, like if you work at a college campus and you're a professor, you might get a sabbatical every few years, which means you get a paid leave to take time off. And so more and more people are actually taking this time off, even from traditional jobs, and calling it a micro retirement to live off of savings and to just enjoy themselves and then come back to work. So this can be a good option for you. Again, if you need extended recovery, you know that you don't just want to take a week or 30 days off. You need to take months and months and months off. And this can be a good fit for you if you have the financial resources. So again, figure out how much you have in savings, how much you could live on, and how long that would last. So how to do it, again, we want to create that minimum monthly budget and calculate how long you can live on your savings. So it's very similar to what we just talked about, but in this one, we want to think about creating a vision for your sabbatical. So if you're thinking, I want to take extended time off, what do you want to get out of that? Do you really want to travel? Do you want to potentially you're not just burnout, but you also feel like you need to go to rehab, or you need to, you know, think about your alcohol or drug use or something else that's going on. This could be something that is bigger and has a bigger intention for your life and how you want to recover in the time that you spend off. So the financial implications here, again, may cause additional stress depending on how much you actually have in the bank and what resources you have, your insurance, things like that. Oops. But it can also give you extended time to reconnect with yourself. So for this one, again, this is big picture. This is life shift. This is, I want to do something completely different. And I'm just not taking a day off to think about if I want to shift jobs. I'm thinking about how I want to restructure my life. And this is a big move that should be very, very intentional. So which option is right for me? Again, we talked about some of the reasons why you might do each piece, but I want to give a few other ideas here. So which option is right for me really depends on your unique circumstances. So number one, if you're doing okay, but you just want to explore, some of the things you can test out that are completely free, do a job shadow. Do a job shadow with someone else that's in a field that you think you might want to transition to, or do an informational interview where you just sit with someone for 30 minutes and ask them about their job so you can start seeing what other options are out there. See what's available on Indeed. Update your resume. Spend time reflecting. Do some of that low-level reflection and exploration work that feels really safe that you can do in the evenings or on the weekends and not make any changes to your job. If you're on the edge of burnout, this is where, again, you might take that time off, find a therapist. You can also redesign your job. This is something that a lot of folks don't necessarily think about, but depending on how close of a relationship you have with your supervisor, you may be able to even talk about restructuring your job responsibilities. So if one piece of your job that's really stressing you out is something that might be able to be redivvied out to another person on your team, or it's just not in your area of expertise, so it's something that someone else takes on, or is something you just stop doing because it's not actually having an impact. Those are the kind of conversations you can have if you feel safe with your supervisor to potentially restructure your job and feel better in the place you're actually at. And then again, start exploring other options, see what else is out there for you. But then number three, you're extremely burnt out. This is when, again, you want to find help immediately, take a leave of absence if needed, and then make a career shift or find that bridge job to temporarily move yourself forward. And then a couple other frequently asked questions that I'll just answer here before we move into a chat. So how can I financially prepare for taking a break? We've kind of touched on this, but the easiest thing you can do is to add up all of your current financial resources to see what you have to pull from. So things like your savings account, your high yield savings account, your investments. There are even times when you can pull from your retirement investments. It's not advised, but there are circumstances where in an emergency you can pull from those reserves. So just really truly write down everything that you need, everything that you have, so that you know what you could pull from if needed. And then second, work with a financial planner. So for example, I have a planning sheet that I use with my clients where we truly look at everything. We look at your debts, your retirement, your income, your job skills, and we piece it all together to create a picture, because you might not need to just do one thing forever. You might take a bridge job for 1 year. You might take 3 months off and then do a bridge job. You might pull from savings for 1 month and then transition into another job. So there's different ways that you can pull these pieces together and start to create a really holistic financial plan for yourself. Another question that comes up a lot, should I take a pay cut? And this can be really scary because you've worked probably really hard to get to where you are, and burnout probably feels like a failure. Like, well, now what if I quit and then I'm behind and I'm not making as much money as I was? So a couple of things for you to think about. If you need a break, again, consider a bridge job that can carry you through. And there are different ways you can mention this on your resume. You can either leave it off completely, you can tell a story of how that weaves into your eventual path to where you go, but it can be a great way to take a pay cut temporarily and then get back into the salary band that you're currently at. And then also, if you're thinking about taking a pay cut, part-time work, lower paying job, freelance contract work, you can actually put together a bunch of different pieces to bring in the amount you need for your monthly expenses. So it doesn't just have to be another full-time job. It could be a mix of a lot of different things. So before we go into the chat, I just want to make sure you have this. I have tons of resources. Like I said, it's money-essentials.com is my website. We have lots of coaches, online resources, programs, lots of different things you can explore if you want to keep talking about this after the workshop today. So definitely check it out. We also, I put my email down here at the bottom. This is my work email. So if you want to message me directly to ask questions or to set up an appointment, you can message me and we will send out these slides after the presentation. So I'll wrap it up there and we can move into Q&A. And then, yeah, also just answer any questions y'all have. So I'll stop screen sharing there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think one sort of call out disclaimer I want to make very quickly, and you touched on this a little bit, I think with burnout, it's such a personal experience and it shows up differently for everybody. So just, we're going to talk about some additional components of planning, both budget planning and sort of readying yourself for a potential transition. It's really important that if you feel like you're on the edge of burnout, constant stress, you're experiencing physical symptoms, it can absolutely be a manifestation of being in constant fight or flight. But it also could potentially be something else. So I always advise everybody on these webinars, one-on-one with clients, it's really important that if you feel like something is off instinctively, trust your gut and certainly check in with the healthcare provider because, there's so many things that could potentially be exhaustion. It's a likely stress, but it is so important. And it can be that bridge to help figure out, do I need a therapist? How can I get access to resources? What does the referral program look like with my insurance? So, just again, because it's not clean cut, like a medical diagnosis, you have burnout or you don't. If you're questioning, what are these symptoms? What's going on? Always, I feel super important to check in with your doctor. So with that, I think I'd love to, Annie, first toss it to Brianna or Tracy. No pressure at all, but if you guys have questions and you want to come off mute or pop them in the chat at any point, feel free to do so. We've got some Q&A that we thought are additional frequently asked questions that we would go through to dig in a bit further, but open invitation if you guys want to start with questions first. All right. If anything comes to mind, feel free to pop them in the chat. So, one of the first questions that comes to mind with this topic, you hit on it. There's a lot of fear and anxiety around change. Well, full stop, change. Very, very difficult as humans. We like safety and security of what we know, the comfort of a routine. But there are times where, we've tried some of the tactics you've talked about and it's time for a change. Like you physically need to be in a new environment because the current one is just no longer serving you, whether it's the role, the company, the people you're working with. And so as you're thinking about building that financial plan and sort of revamping potentially some things in the budget, can you talk a little bit about some of the common pitfalls that people fall into, particularly when you're looking at a family budget, some of the things that you might not be able to take out that red pen and cross off, or things to be mindful of, giving yourself the benefit of time. So you're not just cutting things out and then potentially doing the quit and shift. Can you talk us through some common pitfalls and things, kind of watch outs as you're building that budget?
Yep, definitely. So I think when it comes to if you're sitting down with your budget, you're thinking, I need to cut it out. I need to figure out my minimum monthly expenses. I think people do one of two things again on the opposite end. So either they feel like I I can't live without blah blah blah, and whatever the thing is, like I can't cut anything in my budget, and or they think I need to cut everything and it's going to be so strict and they never have any room for anything joyful. So let's start with the first one. The first one of saying, I can't cut anything. One thing that I've personally experienced is if you start cutting things that you feel like you can't live without, it doesn't have to be a forever thing. So I would encourage you test it out for even 30 days living without something that feels like a critical expense. And you might be surprised. And again, it depends on your circumstances. I'm definitely not telling everyone to just cut stuff from your budget. I know there's very critical things that you have to pay for. But even like cutting your grocery budget by $50 here and there, or deciding that instead of ordering Uber Eats, you're going to try to keep yourself to just having home meals with friends for 1 month, things like that. Those little things, you might be surprised what you can do in 30 days. And also, again, with the bridge job or with taking a short break, these can be temporary things. So you could even spend, 1 to 3 months living on a minimum budget and then come back to your normal budget. So it doesn't have to be a forever thing. And I would encourage you to take that mindset, because I think that can take the pressure off of it versus if you feel like, oh, I have to live on this minimum budget for the rest of my life, that's going to feel extremely hard and scary. So I would say take it one step at a time, just start testing some things out. And then on the opposite end of feeling like, okay, I'm the person who will cut everything and not take care of myself at all, bring in things that will bring your life purpose that are completely free. And that's something any of us can do. So, like, what are the things that bring you joy that are free? So for me, for example, absolutely love meditating, journaling, and reading. So every morning I purposefully set aside an hour before I start work to do those things. It's absolutely free. I always get new books from the library, and I just have this like beautiful bookshelf in my office. I put my books on it. It's this luxurious experience for me, and it's absolutely free. The other thing I do, my husband and I love to walk and talk. So we will go on a walk after work. And not only are we working out, we feel really healthy. We connect with each other. It's our transition out of work into the evening. Again, completely free, something that we do. So the more you can pull in the pieces of things that will bring your life joy and then be able to keep your budget minimal, like those things can help you in the bridge time. And it makes such a big difference. It really does.
Yeah. Just add from personal experience, when I was taking a look at our budget, making a pretty big shift from a corporate role to deciding to go into entrepreneurship. So many reasons why I wanted to make that shift, but I did have a lot of fear, like where and how can we cut things out? And I think with the recognition that when you're making a shift, and if potentially you're thinking about a bridge job, for example, sometimes we only think about the pay cut or the part-time hours, and we're not considering, well, okay, but if I have a little bit more space, I can cook that home cooked meal. I can go grocery shopping every couple of days. I'm giving you just very, very personal examples, but I used to do a huge grocery order at the beginning of every week, super expensive delivery fees. And then unfortunately, and I hated it every week, we would have food waste. And so now getting really specific on, I know what I want to buy. I buy it myself. I'm only buying a couple of days. That doesn't work for everybody. If you're in that very stressful corporate job and you're commuting and you have just, kind of end to end, your days are really packed. But when you are considering what that bridge job and bridge schedule can look like, that could be an option. So there's places that you can figure out where to cut with the benefit of more time. And so totally agree. I think that's a really great, like, what's free and brings me joy? Where are places I can cut? Can I try it for 30 days? So I love all of those tips that you shared. I think super, super helpful.
I'll add one more that it's kind of a total mindset shift thing that I have done too. What's really hard to do is if you have a list of all your expenses, to look at them and say, I need to cut something, because you'll look at things and be like, I need to cut that. So instead, try this. Try creating open a brand new blank spreadsheet and say that I need to make it work on this amount. Like if I wanted to take this bridge job, or if I wanted to only work 20 hours a week, and then find some job example and say, okay, what would it take to make that work? And try to actually start from a blank page, that your mind will get so creative in ways to make it work. I remember doing that when I was I think I had gotten my retirement date down to my 50s, and I was like, well, what would it take to get it down to my 40s? And I created a blank sheet and I just came up with all these creative things. And so, yeah, I just challenge you to try it. You never know what you'll come up with.
Yes, I love that. The bottoms up build. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So, when you're thinking about potentially sticking it out, right? You're on the edge, you're stressed, but you're taking steps to take some of that time off. You're figuring it out, but there's a lot you like about the job. But you also feel like, well, I've added more responsibilities. I feel like I'm doing really well. We've been in an environment the past couple of years with layoffs and, folks not getting even cost of living raises.
Yeah.
So, particularly for women, it is so, so important to self advocate. And whether that's negotiating for yourself on the way in, so you are making that career transition, brand new job, or you're deciding to stay and you really want to make it work, but you feel like there's a gap there in terms of your compensation versus what you're doing. Can you talk through some tips for negotiation, how to approach that? It's a really, really difficult thing to sort of build the case, but would love to hear your tips on how to approach that, especially for women.
Definitely. Yep. And I'll just say from personal experience, I've done this so many times. I have asked for raises, for title changes, for job description changes. Sometimes you get a yes, sometimes you get a no, sometimes you get a no at first that changes to a yes. So
Yeah.
I'll just say all of that to say, it actually is more about learning to advocate for yourself and less about the answer. Because if the answer is no, you can always say, this isn't the right place for me then. I'm going to go to a place where I am respected and people see my value and are willing to work with me. So don't be afraid of the no. That is the hardest thing because you might get a no, and we're all afraid of that. So be
Yes.
less afraid of that and more afraid of never asking, I would say. And then when it comes to the actual conversations, before you have the conversation, decide what it is you want, because we're kind of talking about a couple different things here. If you're feeling burnt out and you want to redesign your job, that's very different. So in that case, you are trying to think about what are the pieces that I want to change about my job. So is it responsibility? For example, if you're a supervisor, you might be supervising other people and doing direct line work. So maybe the conversation is, hey, I can do one or the other. I'm either going to be a rock star manager or I'm going to do direct line work. We might need to reshift what my job is about. That would be the conversation you're having with your supervisor. If it's not redesigning your job and it's actually your salary and you're saying, hey, I haven't gotten a cost of living increase in a while, or I am under market rate compared to what the market says online, that's going to be a different conversation. And then the third one is more like your job has changed. You actually are doing different work in the last year and your job title no longer reflects what you do and your job description no longer reflects what you do. That's when you'd be asking for an actual change in those things. So know exactly what you want to talk about first. And then I would say before you actually have the conversation, practice and have some things outlined. So I think I have a script in my book that talks about how to ask for a raise. So I would use probably the same type of script. Number one, pick a time to meet with the person. So you want to talk to your supervisor. You're probably going to want to set up that time to be separate from your one-on-one time. So you might reach out to them and say, hey, I'd love to set up a time to talk about, and it doesn't have to be specific. So if you don't want to, it can be kind of weird to say like, hey, I want to talk about my salary. Can we set up a meeting? And then it's 2 weeks from now and there's so much stress because you're waiting those 2 weeks. So
Yes.
one of the things I suggest is just saying like, hey, we haven't talked about my personal job performance and my growth at the organization. I'd love to have a check-in about that soon. Can we set aside 30 minutes just to talk about that? So either ask for that live during a meeting, which maybe the supervisor will start asking you, well, like, what is it about? So I would suggest just sending an email. Send an email with that exact ask and then set up the time and say, can we meet soon? Hopefully you want to set that up within the next week so that you don't have a long waiting period, if at all possible. Then once you get on the call, you're going to want to be really clear, really direct, and know what you want to talk about. So again, you already should have something in mind. I want to change my job title. I want to talk about my pay. I want to talk about restructuring my job or redesigning my job. So you should be very clear and say, hey, thank you for jumping on this meeting with me. I'd love to talk about blank, whatever it is. And then you should have some like guidance to the conversation and have a few bullet points that you've already put together. So for example, if it's salary, you would say, hey, I'd really love to talk about my salary. And then maybe your 3 bullet points are my current salary is blank. Since I started, I got this pay amount on this date. Since then, I've expanded my job responsibilities to cover X, Y, Z. The market going rate for this is this. So I'd love to talk about how we can get me closer to that amount. Can we have a conversation about that now? And then open up the conversation so that they can start talking about their thoughts about it. And again, they might say, we absolutely can't do that right now because of we're not doing, COLAs at all, blah, blah, blah. If they don't have the conversation with you right now, the best thing to do is to set another time to talk about it. So you could say, I totally understand, this is really a really important factor to me. Would it be okay if we talked about this again in 3 months or in 6 months? And if they keep saying no, like that's just not even something we're going to talk about, that's maybe a sign that you're not going to get what you want and it's time to make a transition. But if they are at all open to talking about it, that's when you can just have an open conversation. And even if you're sweating through your shirt through the whole conversation, because those conversations are nerve-wracking, you've at least started it and they're gonna, talk with you about what you brought up, which is really cool because you advocated for yourself.
Many tangible nuggets in there. That's awesome. I will make sure to link to your book because I think taking a look at a practice script and just helping yourself, you know, do all of the heavy lifting before the conversation so that when you go into it, nerves don't completely take over. I think that's so helpful. So I'll make sure we
Yeah.
link that as well.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. Love that. Okay. So I think there are so many tips out there about money hacks, savings, ways to build wealth, I should say. What would be your number one money hack? Like if you could go back to that 20 something young, new professional, when you're like, this salary is not going to cut it. What's the number one tip or maybe a couple that you've learned over the years that you'd love to share with this group?
Oh man, that is such a good question. I think two things come to mind. Number one is actually investing. If I had to narrow it down to just one, I would say investing because not enough women know how investing works. Usually if you have a job, you set up a retirement account, you have a retirement rep, but we just put it on the back burner and we're told to do the minimum. You can set aside this amount and then you think, well, I won't even benefit from this until I'm 65. So it's so hard to think about the immediate gratification.
Yeah.
But if you fully understand how to use that to build wealth, you can front load your investments. You can add just a couple, 10, 20, 30, 100 extra dollars a month here and there and become a multimillionaire from being an average person. Like investing is just absolutely insanely beneficial to wealth building. So the more you can learn about investing, the better. But then second, I would say is mindset and asking yourself, what I'm trying to think of the phrase of how to say this. I guess, why not me? Like, if you were to think about people who are like, when I got my doctorate degree, I thought, like, who am I to get a doctorate degree? Both of my parents didn't even go to college, work blue collar jobs. I was a first gen student. I don't even know barely how to go to school and get a basic degree. Like, how am I going to get a doctorate degree? That's not me. And then asking my question, like, well, why not me? Why not? And then same with starting a business. You might think, well, I have no idea how to start a business. Well, lots of people learn how to start a business from scratch. Why not you? Or a C-suite position, or, I'm a total introvert. I used to hate speaking in front of people. I actually remember feeling like I was going to pass out. Like that's how nervous I was. And then at one point I was like, well, why not me learning how to become not afraid of public speaking? And now I've done so much public speaking and I don't get nervous at all. So it's like, ask yourself, why not me? And let yourself dream because there's so much possibility for change that we tell ourselves it's not possible.
That, oh my gosh, and it transcends every topic. I think the best kept secret and things that I've learned since becoming an entrepreneur, like we're all figuring it out. So whether
Yeah.
you're, inside a corporate company, figuring out how to be a parent, starting your own thing, deciding you want to do some consulting, we're all just kind of figuring out, testing and learning every single day to kind of
Yep.
get some traction and then hopefully do it in a way that feels super aligned to the way you want to be living your life. So I love that. Mindset
Yeah.
is so, so, so important.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, we have just a couple of minutes here. I know that you've shared the resources to your website. We will absolutely link all of that. I'm so excited. I guess let's see. I had a couple of more questions planned, but I don't want to go too deep into any of the nitty gritty. I guess could you give us a couple of more actionable planning processes that might be beneficial for families like wanting to sit down. So beyond building the spreadsheet, ways to potentially track progress over time, whether, it's actually physically sitting down, it's a walk and talk like you and your husband, it's the Sunday
Yeah.
meeting, maybe some actionable process things, and then ways to track over time.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important when it comes to finances in general is having your budget aligned to your values. And we a lot of times don't talk about that because we just go straight to spending and numbers and we keep it very much based in the numbers. But one thing you could do, whether you're sitting down with your partner or as a family, asking everyone, what are the things that bring you the most joy? What are some of your deepest values? And then either talking about how do those values show up in how we spend our money, or just personally reflecting on it as, the person that's creating the budget. Because you might find out that you're going out to dinner 5 nights a week, but both of you don't actually value that and you really wish you were doing more home cooking, but no one has ever talked about it or talked about how could we make the time for that, or does one of us love to cook breakfast, the other one loves to cook dinner. So you might have some interesting conversations, or shopping, like, oh, I spend a lot on clothes and actually that is the most valuable thing for me. Like I love feeling dressed up, I love feeling professional, but getting my haircut and my nails done, or having a fancy car are not my value system. And so you decide, actually, like, my $800 a month car payment is kind of crazy because I don't even value my car. I'm just going to get a more basic car to get by. So talking through those kind of things might make dramatic shifts in your budget. Even your home, your rent is the most important, biggest thing you'll probably pay for. Do you want to have a big home or a small home? Do you want it to be rural or in the city? Is that even a value of yours? Or do you just want the most basic, simple place to be? So all of those things are really great to start talking about.
I think it helps to really strengthen, of course, the communication, but I think this feeling that there's shared equity and like we're all in this together, we're taking components of what we all value and, building a
Yeah.
plan that's going to really serve the entire family. So I think that's such a great way to kickstart some important conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, we're just coming up on time here. I just see one more thing in the chat. So I want to kind of go back and make sure. Okay, so Tracy, yes, I will send you those additional resources. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining live. Anyone watching back, hopefully there was a lot. I know there was certainly a lot for me personally to take away. So hopefully this was helpful. Annie, thank you so much for joining and so excited to send the recap out so everyone can find you and follow up for more.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone. So glad you made it. Please visit the website, money-essentials.com. So many great resources. Allison, I'll send you the slides so we can share those out. And then I offer free e-copies of my book. So I'll send out a link to that too.
Amazing. Okay, awesome. Well, take care, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.